Of course, over the past couple of days, the region, not just the African continent, but if you narrow it down to the West African bloc, there's been celebration as ECOWAS, that's the Economic Community of West African States, marks 50 years of its existence with various achievements in peacekeeping, free trade, free movement, and institutional development. The bloc's leaders say it remains a cornerstone of African unity, economic transformation, and peace. Since its establishment, the Economic Community of West African States has expanded, creating more institutions such as the Community Court of Justice to promote the rule of law, as well as granting residents, members of the region, as well as civil society, the ability to bring cases of rights abuses directly to it. But observers say it must urgently address enforcement challenges as well as political instability and other existential threats. Well, joining us now in the studio to analyze ECOWAS's journey so far and provide insights on the way forward, we have digital rights activist Solomon Okedara to speak to this. And thank you for joining us on TVC News at this time.
The pleasure is mine.
Right, and from the foregoing, when one measures the gains that ECOWAS has recorded over the past years, how would you qualify it, especially when you look at recent concerns talking about the threats to democracy in the region following the military incursions that we saw or that we are still seeing in 3 West African nations?
Oh, quite frankly, I would say, yes, some of those military incursions have actually been quite significantly concerning. Because for me, any day, anytime, we would rather prefer to have a democratic society where you can, freely express yourself. How you feel about the government of your society, how you feel about the activities, how you can actually make demand of the government that you elected, as opposed to a military junta. But the truth is, while those challenges are there, I think what is mostly important is actually the will of the democratic leaders within the sub-region to actually ensure that in all locations and in all parts of the ECOWAS sub-region, the democratization is actually established and enthroned in all situations.
All right. And so what do you think is the way forward, going forward?
Well, for me, I think it's actually quite important for us to have that conversation regularly. That, look, what do we actually want? Do we want a society that we can freely choose our leaders? Democracy is actually defined to be the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Now, when you have a kind of government where some persons, with the rule of the gun, have come to power and they want to lord it over you, that cannot actually achieve, the underlying factor of democracy. So I believe it's important for the people to know that they must be carried along, in the process of evolution of a government of their society. So there must be constant, sensitization of the people on why democracy still remains the best form of government.
Right. And in terms of the influence of ECOWAS with these realities facing it, how would you also, expect ECOWAS to behave moving forward, either to get these nations back, to woo them back, because there has been threats of sanctions which apparently didn't work, and all of that. So how then do we now quantify the influence of ECOWAS in this regard?
Well, I think in all fairness to the ECOWAS leadership, we realize that they have actually demonstrated goodwill in bringing back those members. And as a matter of fact, I think until January this year, the ECOWAS leadership did not actually call back some of his operations in those states. And of course, when we look at it, that is actually giving them, some kind of latitude that, look, we have thrown out, to open our arms. We want to have you back. You are brothers. So because when you look at it, whatever threatens the peace of Nigeria, we most likely threaten the peace of the Niger. And of course, when you look at it, Burkina Faso and all of those states that share borders with Nigeria. So that's just an example of why we have to, continuously engage them. Right. Dialogue is actually an important tool in this whole thing.
Right, and then let's also come again to one of your main constituencies, when you would also measure how far the rule of law and respect for human rights have fared, under this past 50 years, using the instrument, the ECOWAS instrument of the Community Court of Justice. Yes. What will be your assessment?
Well, I think I would say over the past years, the Community Court of Justice has actually consistently shown its readiness to be seen and respected as a reliable protector of rights of the community citizens. And when you look at it, some of the judgments that's actually issued in the past, whether the blasphemy law, of the Kano State in Nigeria, or the Twitter suspension law, suspension judgment, or the judgment against the government of Togo on the suspension of internet access or services in Togo, you will see that this court has actually demonstrated its willingness to show the members of the community, the citizens, that look, we are here to protect your rights. So I will say, in all fairness to the court, it has shown that willingness to protect the rights of the citizens of the community.
Right. At least I know of at least two judgments that you've gotten in your favor by heading to the ECOWAS Court of Justice. Yes. One of them involving the Nigerian Broadcasting Code.
Absolutely.
There's also the most recent where the ECOWAS Court slammed some portions of the Kano blasphemy law and ordered that it be expunged. Basically, it now brings us to the issue of how well are these judgments enforced? We also have seen the courts issuing fines, of various degrees, but yet we hear the judgment creditors saying that they still don't have the physical evidence of these victories. So how well is the court, or how strong is the Court of Justice?
Well, I do not think the issue of enforcement underscored the strength of the court as a critical stakeholder institution within the community. This is what I think. I think the issue of enforcement, it's actually an issue for all. And because we don't want to have a situation where we have a critical stakeholder institution that can only back but cannot bite. So, and until we all understand the nexus between rule of law and economic prosperity of state or the bloc itself, then we realize that member states need to do more than actually just early judgments delivered by the state. So what that means is that we need to put in place effective, enforcement mechanism by the state, by the critical stakeholder mechanism within the ECOWAS community.
Even though they are saying, some of these member states are saying that you should respect their peculiarities before you talk about enforcing judgments of the ECOWAS court.
Well, their peculiarities are respected. When you look at what happens with the blasphemy judgment of Kano State, the court did not say, the court recognized the fact that the state has a significant and legitimate concern to preserve law and order. However, the court said that, look, you cannot have laws that have excessive restriction. Right. For example, you don't want somebody to actually create chaos by blaspheming a particular religious figure. But they're saying, do not impose a particular penalty that will make a mockery of the whole sense of the right you want to protect.
All right, we've run out of time, Solomon Okedara, but we thank you very much for your contributions
the pleasure is mine always.
The news.